The prompt for this drawing is dreams. When I first heard this, I knew that I wanted to have something dreaming, and of course, what better place to start than a cute little monster? For a few reasons, I like working with things like this. One is that a tiny cute monster is harder to mess up than if I draw a cute little kid sleeping on their feather pillow. Two, it's fun and goofy, and if you're signing up for creating 31 drawings in the month of October, I figure anything you can do to make it more entertaining for yourself is a good idea. Before I ever touched this page though, I drew out a quick sketch. You can see here that my original sketch was not too far from what I decided to go with, which is honestly fairly uncommon for me. I often have to do quite a few, so don't stress if you don't nail it on the first time. I was not happy with the way the back leg was laying over the side of the creature though, so you can see I drew a few more examples of that, all of which felt progressively worse. Eventually I ran into my daughter's room and just grabbed a giant stuffed animal and took a look. It helped, I think. Next, I looked up some different cartoon versions of meat and practiced drawing them. I imagined initially that I would just do one large chunk of meat, but ended up having several in the dream bubble. This is another good reason to sketch things out. You don't always know which direction your explorations will take you. Once I felt like I had it settled, I drew out the box to work in and put down a gentle pencil sketch, just so I knew where the boundaries of my objects were before adding ink. I highly recommend this with your ink drawings. The next step is really where the fun kicks in for me. I started going around and creating the base shapes, nice solid lines where they needed to be, and fuzzy textures wrapping around the little critter so he didn't look so rigid. I'll speed up some of the intermittent components here, but the drawing itself took 27 minutes once I started with ink, and probably another 30 to 60 minutes prior in planning, prepping, and sketching. I have this sped up now to 7 times my actual work speed. You can see my odd moments of pulling back and evaluating after I make a line to see what I should do next. This is pretty low stress drawing for me. I really enjoy it. I almost always have music on or listen to a podcast or an audiobook. What do you listen to while you draw? Let me know in the comments below. I'm always curious what kinds of material people consume whilst drawing. We are all so different. I've heard a lot of people over the years talk about how they can't imagine listening to anything while they draw. I can certainly understand refraining from listening to very intellectual things that take a large amount of concentration. So I often listen to music that I know really well, and therefore I don't have to pay too much attention to it. You can see already, only perhaps 4 or 5 minutes into the drawing, it is taking shape. This is part of why I love the early stages. It's easy to see progress and to be excited about it. Right now I'm not worried about shading or lighting, simply shapes. Where are things? How do they interact with one another? And is the composition functioning? These are the questions that I'm concerned about. The sketch really makes this stage easier and more pleasurable as well. I don't have to do a whole lot of thinking. I can follow my own guidelines that I sculpted out for myself earlier. Now it's time to start working on shading, on my favorite part of ink drawing. I will start mapping out individual sections that need to either be filled in or need to have directional shading applied to them. I like to work in the direction the shape is flowing, so for the little monster, I try to shade around the contour of his belly. This emphasizes the three-dimensional qualities of the beast, while also giving some interesting visual textures. I drew that line in the center of the belly so I have a measuring stick of sorts as my curved lines move toward that point. Give yourself guides and crutches wherever you can. There is no prize for finishing early or refusing to use help when it comes to ink. It can be impressive to just dive in head first, but I think focusing on enjoyment and satisfaction is a better general idea. I have this sped up to 2 times speed right now. After that initial round of shading, I'm starting to move on to the legs, starting to add in more shading and more texture. I like having the fur come out of that general contour. It gives this idea that it doesn't have a clean edge. It's a trick that I used earlier as I was plotting out the critter, something that took me a long time to learn. I used to draw these large, overarching contour lines to everything I put together. But when you have something that's made of fur or something that's fuzzy, that doesn't quite serve your purpose. Let's speed this up some more to see what the finished product looks like. For the remainder of this drawing, I'm basically going to follow the same things that you've already seen. I'm going to block in some areas that need to be darker. I'm going to shade where there needs to be shading. I'm going to keep my lines moving directionally as much as I can. And I'm going to add little pieces of texture here and there. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I hope you'll come and look as I move through all of Inktober this year. If you haven't joined into Inktober yet, and you're thinking about it, please consider doing so. I know we might be a day or two behind right now, but there's no problem with starting a little bit behind. Thank you for listening and watching. Feel free to watch through the end to see how this turns out, but don't feel like you have to. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.